I've said it before and I'll say it again. Although Canadian pollsters are actually pretty accurate at being able to track Canadians' support for different political parties, whenever they start trying to do specific issue based polling, it all turns into liberal propaganda more often than not. And I think it's for two different reasons. One, I think a lot of polling companies have people who are a little bit more biased to the left in their own worldview. So when they start trying to devise questions to ask people about different policies, they put it in such a way that it directs people into a liberal direction. And I don't think it's actually intentional. And the other thing is, I think that despite people being pretty honest about which party they support, I think when you start asking people hot button political questions, they start just mirroring what they think a liberal elite would say because they see people on the legacy media saying that, well, if you don't believe this, then you're an awful person or you're stupid or you're a bigot or whatever. So when you start asking people, well, what do you think about the trucker convoy or what do you think about vaccine mandates or lockdowns? Even though people, by their own behavior and by what they indicate in terms of national party polling, they say, I hate it, it's awful, please get rid of it. When you ask them, are you in favor of lockdowns because it's helping save people? People are like, well, yeah, of course I'm in favor of it. Of course I'm in favor of it, even though it's an anonymous poll, but people almost feel watched even when they're doing something that is purely anonymous that no one will ever see how they answered. And the one example I want to talk about today is this new poll that came out from Ledger that had a section asking people about climate related issues. And it's full of misinformation. The results do not match the reality of what Canadians actually think. And this is effectively my thesis on why, whenever you see issue based polling and it does not match reality in any way that you see it, like if you walk around and you asked your friends about this and they would vehemently disagree with the way that the polling questions results look, then it's probably not accurate. So here's the first question that Ledger had put out. And it says, thinking of the past 4 weeks and the holiday season, would you say they have been unusually warm compared to prior holiday seasons? Yes is 80%, no is 16%. And although this seems like a very neutral question, just based on the fact it's being asked and it being sort of, there's obviously, it's politically charged because it's part of a political poll, people immediately clue into the fact that, well, you're asking me about climate change. Well, you're seeing if I deny climate change or not. So yes is basically saying people are saying, oh yes, I do believe in climate change, and no is the people who say no, either I didn't think it was unusually warm or I do not believe in climate change, because that's obviously the implication of the question. Do you believe in climate change? And then sort of the implied questions down the line are, do you believe in the carbon tax? Should we put a price on pollution and all this stuff? And here's the follow up question they ask that I think kind of gives away the game a little bit based on how the left thinks about climate change. It says, among those who say yes, in your personal opinion, is the warm spell a direct consequence of climate change or not? Yes was 73%, no was 12%. Now, I've been told for the past 8 years, decade or so, that if you make the joke, oh, well, when it's super cold outside, oh, thanks, global warming, or man, I wish climate change would really kick in. Well, people freak out. All the leftists come out of the woodwork and say, that's weather, that's not the climate. But whenever a specific warm weather incident happens, that's immediately climate change. And pollsters are asking people, hey, it was a little bit warmer today. Was that climate change? Hey, you thought you had a $5 bill in your pants pocket and it's missing. Was that climate change? Everything seems to be climate change to the left as soon as as soon as it's a data point that they like. But despite the fact that our last like wildfire season, which they also pulled, and everyone was like, "Oh, 100% it's climate change," we've been arresting people all over the place for arson, charging them and getting them convicted because these people. There's obviously a bunch of people for whatever reason going around dumping gasoline and throwing matches into woods. There's a guy in Quebec who's been charged with 22 counts of setting fires. That's insane. There is obviously maybe the weather's warming a little bit. I have this chart of Calgary weather since it's the city I live in with minimum and maximum temperatures and medium temperatures. And I even went all the way back to like 1895 or 1890 when they started tracking this stuff. It's really not changed in the Calgary area over time. You get some hotter years, you get some cooler years, but there's no consistent rise in temperature over time. But a lot of the left just likes to look at the temperature over the past 10 years and declare that we're in a crisis. Could the temperature be rising slightly over time in terms of the average? Maybe. Is it a crisis? I don't know. But the thing is that all these polls are meant to try and direct you in sort of a way of being more okay with the carbon tax, being more okay with different climate regulations, despite the fact that they do nothing, hurt you financially, and it's effectively just usually supplying some sort of liberal slush fund, like the green slush fund that we've seen. A lot of money that goes toward green tech and other sort of green initiatives from the liberal government just go to the friends of the Liberal Party. It's a sole source contract. They get $20 million to do nothing, and that's a fantastic. Isn't that helping the climate? I think it is. I guess if we burn a lot of green $20 bills, that means we're making the climate better. But here's another poll or question that came out of Ledger that I think also just shows that most people are lying when they're asked these questions. Even then, who cares if it was a little warmer during the holiday season? Does that prove that we're in a crisis? It really doesn't. Anyways, here's the polling question. Another polling question asked. It's just a generic top issues question. They usually throw this at voters every time they do a poll. And it says top issues: 21% inflation, 17% housing affordability, 15% healthcare, climate change 9%, poverty 5, government debt 5, homelessness 4, taxes 4, interest rates 4, immigration 3. People are lying. If only 9% of people put climate change in their top issues, and I believe, or it's their top issue, yet 80%, 73% of people who said yes in that last poll think that this warm spell is climate change, and climate change is having its effects all over the place, and we're in a crisis, and the holiday season was probably warmer because of climate change. Do you really think only 9% of people would make it their top issue if we're supposedly in a crisis? Whenever you look at the polling where you get to pick 3 top issues, even in those, climate change usually only punches around 25%. So only 25% of Canadians put climate change somewhere in their top 3, which does not mean a lot of people care about it. That's a worse approval rating for caring about climate change than Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's actual personal approval rating. I do not believe people actually care this much about climate. People just reflect what they think the opinion you're supposed to have is. It's not because people are sheep or something like that. It's because people don't want sort of to have resistance with other people. They don't want to get into a fight. They're just going to say, yeah, I guess it was warmer. Yeah, I guess it was climate change. Did these people know anything about the climate? No. Does the pollster even know if this has anything to do with climate change? No. And it's a stupid question to pose unless you know it is. You don't ask people's opinion about something that you know is potentially completely untrue unless you're like you're trying to track support for like different conspiracy theories or whatever, and you're seeing how many people believe it. But that's effectively what this is. There are people with an almost religious belief that whatever warm weather happens is climate change, and whatever cold weather happens is definitely not is not the antithesis of climate change. Anyways, I still like pollsters, still follow the polls. They're accurate in terms of the political parties and some policy issues, but you got to really look at how they word it. If it's not worded impeccably, it often is just going to be completely full of crap in terms of its accuracy to reality or the way that Canadians actually think. But other than that, that should be it for me today. I have my usual Give, Send, Go link in the description of this video. If you want to donate, still being sued by a Chinese billionaire. It's over the dumbest defamation case ever. We literally, all we said about him in the story was that he was donating to Aaron O'Toole's leadership campaign in 2020. And then we said that he had like connections to the CCP, in which we then linked to a Globe and Mail article written over 2 years before detailing all of his connections. And he thought that was that he could sue us for defamation, even though he never went after the Globe and Mail. He's just going after me because he didn't think I could pay. But we've been fighting it out with him. It's cost me over $25,000, but we will end up winning this case. But if you give money, it does help, lighten the burden that we have in terms of our costs. And then other than that, we also have, I'm also running for the Calgary Signal Hill Conservative Party nomination. So if you live in Calgary Signal Hill, it's this riding right here on screen. Then make sure to buy a Conservative Party membership. Make sure any friends that live in the area or family buy a Conservative Party membership. Vote for me. There's a ton of red Tories in my race, people who were big Aaron O'Toole type fans who are now supposedly on the pure Polyev train when they've never actually been able to demonstrate they hold a conservative principle at all. But, you can't stop people from running in nominations, but you can try and win the nomination. So if you live in that area, vote for me. If not, you can still donate on my website. The link to my website's in the description below. And other than that, I hope everyone has a great day, and I'll definitely be back later with another random topic to ramble about.